Hey guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Today we get back into First Kings. If you remember, we went a little bit into First Kings a bit prematurely. We were actually supposed to go into the Psalms, but went into First Kings and went about 3 chapters into the book. But then we got back on track with the Psalms, and now we're back in First Kings, and we're going to pick up where we left off in chapters 4 through 6 today. And as we read these chapters, we get to witness and read about the construction of the temple. And as we're reading it, we can just think about what a wonderful work it must have been to be a part of the crew that constructed this temple. And we could also think about what a holy work it was, what a joyful work it was, and especially what a rewarding work it would have been once the temple was complete. To be able to see this beautiful structure, a beautiful structure that was just inundated with images and pictures of holiness and things that would cause a person to really get a sense, the sense of the presence of God there in the temple. But as New Testament believers, we can also think about this construction and think about the church, because the church too is, in a sense, a temple under construction. And there's 2 main texts that teach us this. There's 1 Corinthians chapter 3, which more deals with a local church. And then in 1 Peter chapter 2, that seems to be speaking about the universal church. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul is talking about the church at Corinth. And he says this starting in verse 9. He says, "For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. According to the grace of God which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it." He goes on and talks a little bit about that. And then in verse 16 he says, "Do you not know that you are a temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man destroys the temple of God, God will destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, and that is what you are." So the Apostle Paul said, I was like a master builder. I laid the foundation. The foundation was none other than Jesus Christ. But the Apostle Paul had left Corinth, and another person was building on that same foundation. But they had to be very careful what they built on that foundation, and to make sure that it was good materials that would last, and would be able to sustain itself throughout the various trials and things that it might undergo. But he concludes it by saying, you're the temple and you're holy, and therefore a person has to be very careful that they don't destroy the holy temple. So that's more in connection with the local church, which is true with us as well. Those who are part of a local church, we are built into a community of other believers, and hopefully in that local church that we attend, the foundation upon which all the work and all the labor takes place is Christ, and he is the foundation. And then we build upon that foundation as we build each other up, as we live lives that are molded together in unity with one another, and that is growing up into a building, a holy place in which God can dwell. But as mentioned also, this is true of the church universal. In 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 4, it says, "And coming to him," speaking about Christ, "as to a living stone which has been rejected by men, but is choice and precious in the sight of God. You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ." And so here the focus is on Christ being the cornerstone. Again, kind of with this idea of the foundation, but he's the starting point. He's the one upon which the rest of the building aligns itself. And we as living stones are being built up in relation to Christ. And the purpose of this is so that we can be a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So we are a holy temple before the Lord, again, under construction, being built up, and all the time being a place in which and through which spiritual sacrifices can be offered up to God. And so as we think about this, we could say, yes, it's a wonderful thing that to read about Solomon's temple, and we should, be moved by the fact that these people were so detailed and so working hard towards building up this physical temple, Solomon's temple, so that God would have a dwelling place there in Israel. But we could also go a step further and say how wonderful it is that our God is still building a temple. Our God is still constructing a dwelling place for himself here on the earth. And we get to be participants in that. As we work and labor for the kingdom, we are like builders who are building upon the foundation of Jesus Christ. As we join together with other living stones, we are becoming a dwelling place of God in which spiritual sacrifices can be lifted up. And so we are a holy people, collectively, as a temple, individually, as living stones. And that should inform the decisions that we make in our lives and the way that we live here on this earth. So let's be inspired by the construction of Solomon's temple, and let's think about our own relationship to God as we too are becoming a part of his dwelling place. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.